don't have a life anymore. This has turned into my life. I was fighting for my land, but I'm fighting companies. I'm fighting for environmental justice. My name is Gwendolyn Jones. Right now, I'm living here in Angleton, Texas, but my home is Freeport, Texas. My family came to Freeport in the early 1920s. My grandfather was a school teacher after the Civil War. He had to come to Freeport to start the first school for colored people. As a child, I remember us living off the land. We had gardens, we had chickens, rabbits. In those days, we didn't have locks on our doors. It was a place where a lot of people would go and gather, listen to music, play cards, drink, and enjoy themselves. And our home was right there in the middle of all of that traffic. But it was safe. It was a segregated community. It's a poor community. My family was already there when the plants started growing, besides the supper plant. And then we had Dow, which was on the other side of the Brazos River, because the Brazos River, where we live at, is right next to the mouth of the Gulf. The port, when they first started operation, they was in the neighborhood. We knew they was building a plant, and we knew it was creating jobs, but we didn't understand the chemicals involved. So when the plants was up and running, when there was explosion or gas release, it was just normal. My mother had breathing problems. I had breathing problems. We all have this cancer, have this illness in her, and it's from us breathing this air that has toxic chemicals in it. I know, like BASF, they was making like byproducts. Dow, it was a chemical they was making, and then they had said that it was too dangerous, and then they had the government has stopped them from making it. I know they make chlorine. I know they make styrene, hydrochloric acid, different kind of acids. I know that if they knew what the chemical plants was doing to our bodies, then we wouldn't have been there. My father, he worked at Chemical Lehman. There was a trucking company. They would load the trucks up with chemicals, and then when they empty out the chemicals, then they bring them into the shop, and my daddy, they would clean the chemical trucks out. When my father came home, he wore the same clothes that he went to work in. But my father started having health issues at a young age. And my mother, she was having health issues. But we still surrounded by all these plants. I worked at Dow Body in the maintenance department as a maintenance clerk for several different supervisors, but I worked throughout the whole plant, and I became a lab technician. So in the lab technician, I worked in research and development, analytical services, and I worked in a production unit as far as running the lab. And then I went to work in Texas City at BP Amoco at the chemical plant, but I ended up working with chemical and the refinery unit in the laboratory. And that plant there was when I realized that I really wanted to go into safety. I was on what they called the CAS team, which was a safety committee, but the problems was more greater. It needed the upper management to step in and to make sure things are done correctly and safely. Because we had that big explosion in 2005, and then they had that big old oil spill in the Gulf. And I think it's more or less a culture problem. And you could bring a management in now, but that management needs the support of his supervisor. Because I know when we had that big spill that made national attention, the manager there, he was doing his job. He was trying to get the people to, for one thing, to be diversity and inclusion. And then the next thing, he wanted them to work safely. So he brought on people to have safety meetings, real safety meetings, ask questions to understand the chemicals you're working with. and understanding the proper way. That's when the guy asked the question that if a pump, that it's a major pump, and this pump here is the main pump for the unit, do I have to put on a safety suit before I go and repair that pump? Or can I just get over there like I normally do and fix it? He said, no, you put on that safety suit. A lot of times it's not the manager, it's the culture of the employees because they've been there for years and years. They were using the benzene to clean tools. A lot of them felt the need to wear gloves. They didn't understand the chemicals that they was being exposed to, and they've been doing it like that for years and years. And it's just like what we try to do in environmental justice in Freeport, Missouri County. It's a culture. We've been breathing this here all along. No, yeah, we know the water is bad, but we buy bottled water. Workers are disposable. Workers give their whole life. They're dedicated to their job. They care about their job. They care about doing a good job. But the sad part about it is that the plant knows about all these toxic chemicals. And the plant knows that a lot of the PPE they wear is not enough to protect them. When they go in certain areas, there needs to be more alarms, monitoring devices, even outside the plants, the way I feel, because everything don't stay in the pipes. You know, when you catch samples, you have to open up something and some things might drip off. But do you clean it up? You know, do you take the necessary precaution to make sure that it stay clean? Because if that's the case, then we wouldn't have bottled water in the offices, in the control rooms. But the only thing too is that you can't see it in the air, but it's in the air, and we're breathing those toxic chemicals because it's the same way it's in the water, it's in the air, and it's in the soil. The city of Freeport has never done anything to help the Black and minority communities. Nothing. And as a matter of fact, they are the reason why we do not have our home today. We are in the vicinity of the Port of Freeport. The port of Freeport was in the residential area. So we had prime land that we was living on. What the city of Freeport was doing during that time, and it's been going on since the late 80s, they were tearing down low-income homes, especially on Freeport. They wasn't giving any building permits. They have never put anything new on the East End. It was a lady house that was renting in a house. They wouldn't even give her a permit to repair the roof. They didn't have eminent domain. They wanted her out of their house for the port. The city of Freeport illegally tore down my mother's home without my mother's signature. So you had to pay them to tear down the home. They didn't pay them to tear down the home. The bill kept going up, and I didn't know any of this here until they was talking about eminent domain. So I had went to the man that was over the property, and at that time the bill was like $11,000. I was getting ready to get the family house put back on the East End because the city had torn the house down illegally. They didn't have the legal rights to tear the house down. And so anyway, I was getting ready to put the house back up there when I was told that they wouldn't give me a permit because the port is taking the property, the Port of Freeport. All the lawyers in the courthouse, they all work for the port. When 2015, when we had the meeting, they were specifically telling us they had eminent domain because I filled out paperwork for two people that was leasing a house or renting a home on the East End so they could get reimbursed. So Shorewater Law Firm, who was representing us for eminent domain, the port didn't even have eminent domain during the time. If we would have stayed in our homes and never would have had a crooked attorney, they never could have taken the property on the East End. I'm fighting for climate change. I never ever thought I would be doing this here, but I felt the obligation to do it when I became aware of it because of what we have suffered through all these years. Well, they knew what was wrong. And they never said a word. We pretty much live off the land, but today you cannot live off the land. Not in Freeport, not in Brazoria County, because it's so toxic. The people that came home with the sulfur on their bodies and probably getting their food because they had their lunches and didn't have on clean clothes. And my dad, and it just, and when you're driving, it's in the car, it's in your house, it's in the water. And the more you do it, the more the stink, and then the windows are up and all the chemicals of disclosure and everything coming in. And through the grace of God, we have gone through that. But now I understand the health, even though they always say Black people had the worst health, the minorities, low income. Yeah, we have the worst health because of you. That's why our health is bad, because we was eating healthy. We was eating off the land. We had our chickens, we had our food that we grew, vegetables, made our own jelly. They could make their own bread. There was very little we needed because we was living off the land. But when y'all came and y'all started polluting everything, and I thought about the cows when I used to leave home and go across that big bridge in Freeport to go over on Velasco side. Used to be a whole bunch of cows over there. The cows no longer there. People no longer had chickens in their backyard or rabbits or anything. Why? Because it's polluted.